Today on the podcast, I'm joined by someone I've worked with closely as a client, and I'm glad to now call a friend, businessman and property investor Minesh Pattni. Minesh moved from the UK and has built a real estate portfolio in Dubai, and he's here to share what it's really like investing here, from oversupply fears to tax questions and return on investment. This episode is for anyone in the UK thinking about Dubai real estate, but unsure who or what to believe. Let's get into it. So, welcome, Minesh, to my podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming today.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
Obviously, we know each other already, but maybe just to give an overview to anybody that might be watching this. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you first got into property?
Yeah, sure. My property is not a sort of full-time thing for me, and it hasn't been even. I came from the UK. I'm born and raised in the UK, and I've been here now, 1 year, 3 months, something like that. In the UK, I became a landlord in 2008. Started my own business prior to that. It was about 4 years before that. Created online, Europe's biggest online clinics, and then launched a supplement business, which was equally successful. And then thought, right, what do I do with this? And started getting into property in 2008, and was, picking up almost one every 6 months at that time. Moved to Dubai last year, and I've become a property investor here.
So, in the UK, when you say you're buying property, what was the reason for buying this?
In the UK, why was I buying? I think I was just really listening to what people were saying, which is, you can't go wrong with property. Over the course of time, it will go up. Rental yields are there. It's a good sort of investment to make. And I just kept doing it. And to be honest, it's still not a sort of full-time thing for me, even now, but I quite enjoy it.
And what happened to the UK to make you want to come to Dubai?
The UK has been great. If you'd asked me maybe 20 years ago to leave the UK, maybe come and live here, I would have probably said no. In fact, I did say no. My business partner asked me, I remember we came here 2009. We were on a balcony on the marina, and he asked me, would you ever live here? And I said no, because I loved the UK at that time for what it was, what it stood for, and what it was about. But, here I am. I've actually made the move last year.
And how's life in Dubai now?
Good. Very
in
good.
comparison to the UK?
I mean, you still miss home a little bit. So, I can't ever say that, that's it. The UK, is a no-no, but I do like it here. I enjoy the safety. I enjoy what's available here in terms of entertainment and leisure, and simply the convenient way of life here.
What's so convenient about Dubai's life?
I think a lot of people ask me this, that what's different in terms of day-to-day living, and I'd say that you can almost get. We're in the UK. We're so used to doing almost everything ourselves, right? If you go shopping, you're lucky if you've got someone behind a checkout. You're sent to a kiosk, you pack your own bags. Here, it's like we're back in the 80s in many ways, where you've got someone behind the till, someone's packing your bag, even to the point of where they, help you to the car or to your place. And whatever you need is just, an app away. Whether you need to even, if you don't want to go and fill petrol in your car, they can come to you, or you want some cleaning done on an app and they'll be round in an hour. So it's very convenient life here.
I always tell people it's when you wake up in the morning, you don't have to look out the window. You just put whatever clothes you want to wear. There's no conditioning as far as weather. Is it raining today? Is it going to be sun? Is it going to be hot today? You just know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so you just put your shorts on if it's the weekend.
Yeah, your wardrobe certainly changes when you move here.
Yeah, definitely. So just to go back to the initial thing is that you came to Dubai and you became an investor. Was that the plan before you left the
No,
UK?
no.
Okay.
Well, I came here really just for a change of life. As you know yourself, I brought my mother along, who's elderly, and my sister also, and my dog. And to be honest, since COVID, I was working from home back in the UK. So when I really thought about it and thought, well, you're at home anyway, what difference would it make what country you're in? So when I came here, I just basically needed to find things to do. And I knew property is something which I'm not going to say I'm an expert at, but it's an area where I've dabbled. And if I can get involved, passes my time, maybe make some money, and um, yeah, find it interesting.
And what makes Dubai, you say it's interesting, what makes Dubai attractive for investment as an investment sort of
I think
destination?
I think that there's two things here. One is, how often do you hear somebody that says, "Oh, I went to Dubai and I didn't like it." Everybody loves Dubai. Everyone that I've ever spoken to has always raved about Dubai as a destination. Now that's for a holiday. Okay, and I think that that's a good thing to look at when you're assessing whether a property market is viable or not. And then the second thing is, it's not just a holiday anymore for a lot of people. They're moving here because they want a holiday all year round. In many ways, obviously, some people come here and they work, but generally, I find that the place, what Dubai has to offer, there's not many places that can offer that. In terms of an all round balance of having leisure, safety, health, the taxes. Um, you know, it's got quite a bit, and that in itself uh, creates for an environment for property investment.
So I know that you've invested in other locations in the world,
Yeah,
and I know that Dubai does it their way. They've got their own process. How does that process differ from UK, India? I think Egypt you've
yeah,
invested in,
yeah.
etc. A few other countries probably in the world. I think I don't know.
I think process wise, if I look at how long does it take to do the formalities, and I've not bought any ready made properties, but from what people have told me, it's like 24, 48 hours you can buy a property. It's not all the rigmarole that you have at least used to in India, and places like the UK, where I'm selling properties and it's taking months and months and months.
And talking about the long game in terms of your investments that you're doing here in Dubai, what's knowing you as I do, I know you may not have a stringent plan that you're going to necessarily
Yeah.
stick to, but what are your options with these properties that you've bought so far?
Well, I'd say that at the moment I would look to sell where possible, maybe 6 to 12 months after handovers. Um, but there again, like I said, I'm not sort of sticking to a particular rule because I think a lot changes over time, and then it may well be that there's some of these properties that when they're finished are great rentals. So I can't rule it out. The fact that I'd keep them, rent them, or sell them. But what I do know is that they're good properties, good, relatively good locations, and then we'll see what happens over time.
What do you think's changed so far in the last year or so since you've been buying?
In the year that I've been here, a lot of the places where I've bought properties, the government has gone ahead and announced various improvements to infrastructure, be it new roads, um, the airport moving bigger, better exhibition centres, etc., etc. There's always things happening, even throughout the course of the year that I've been here. Um, a lot of the properties that I've bought, I didn't buy and say, I can't claim to be that clever and say that, well, I knew they were going to build a road there or infrastructure. I had no idea, but it's just buzzing. I think that's what I love about the last year I've been here has been a real eye opener because we're not used to that in the UK of the pace of change of improvement.
What has changed in the UK in the last year, do you think?
On the way here, I was thinking about what defines property and investment and what what's a big component of that? And I'd always say is the economy, because the economy is what drives, the growth of property or the decline of property. In the UK, I would say just before I left, I heard a lot of landlords saying they want to get out of the game because of a lot of the regulations that we're bringing in, taxes. And I think the general sentiment is, on one hand, you've got a chancellor that says they want lots of growth, but then the things that they put in place are there to basically go the opposite to growth. So I don't see where that's going to go, and I can't see it being positive for a while. Whereas here I see the opposite. When they say, look, we've got plans for the next 5-10 years of economic growth, and you can see how everything then aligns off the back of that. And I say that's a major difference.
Is that been your experience in other areas of the world where you've invested?
No, when I talk about, for example, India, I bought what, one, two apartments, really nice areas. They haven't gone up in value, and it's been 12, 13 years. And then let's just say, for example, I do want to sell them. I've got to pay taxes over there. So, it makes it very difficult.
What are the taxes based on if you haven't made any money?
No, so let's assume there's a gain there. You've got to pay tax locally, as is the case in the UK. A lot of people, they think that if they move here, that they can, still have rental properties back home and that they don't have to pay tax on them. It's not true. It's basically where the properties are located. And here, there is no CGT, and there's no tax on your gains from rental income. So, if I look at India, hasn't really worked for me. Egypt, at the time when I bought in Egypt, just before I did a little bit of homework, and all the projections and the actuals were showing about a 25 to 30% increase year on year. And as soon as I buy them, you've got, governments being overthrown, new parties coming in, basically instability for the last however long, since it's been probably about 2009-ish. It's just been very unstable, and then the currency itself has been destroyed. So I've sort of in a way written those ones off.
But now you're selling up in the UK.
Yeah.
And as a resident of the UAE now, Dubai, how does that work for you as far as selling off in the UK? Is that an
In what
advantage
way?
now? Well, just from a tax point of view, ease of doing it remotely, etc.
So can you do it remotely? Yes, because you don't really have to be there if you've got an agent that you either know or you can build a relation with over there. But the real advantage comes in terms of tax, because if you're not a resident of the UK and you've become, say, for example, a UAE resident, then I simply can sell my properties, and there's minimal tax to pay on them. And that's because there was, legislation that was brought in previously. I mean, I'm talking about prior to 2019. If you were an expat and you had a UK property and sell it, you wouldn't have to pay tax on it at all. Then they started introducing taxes, but there's a good benefit if I was to sell today, because I can get the values of the properties rebiased to 5th of April 2015 and only pay the gain since then to today, rather than the whole gain over the period that I've owned it. And that's a significant saving.
Let's go back and talk about Dubai and the market, etc. There's a lot of people, well, naysayers, who talk about the market here in Dubai, and one of the things that they have suggested or talk about is the oversupply, rumors of oversupply, etc. here in Dubai. And I just wondered, what do you think? What do you say to that?
I've seen that go around, that rumor mill, and obviously it concerns me because I've bought quite a few properties here, so I think, well, what's going to happen? But then when I started digging, started listening to some credible people, and started reading some stuff, it was interesting. It made me feel better in knowing, just if I look at last year, it was a 21.4% increase in values just last year.
On average.
on average. If I look at this year, it's projected to be similar, if not a little bit higher, by the end of 2025. You know, people have been talking about this for over 3 years.
No, they've been talking about it since 2003 when it was first
Well,
introduced, property here.
yeah, I
It's a
mean, I
conversation
wasn't
I have
around,
almost every single week. Yeah.
wasn't around then.
Mm.
But I say, you know, the main thing is what they're not considering is what's about to happen in Dubai, and that is that the population is going to increase. There's expected 3.9 million people due to live in Dubai between now and the 2040.
So we're 3.9 now.
Yeah. So we're going to double the
It's going
population.
to double the population in what, 15 years?
Yeah. And
So it's quadrupled in the last 20.
Yeah.
Certainly tripled in the last 10 or 15 years. So yes.
and the thing is that people worry about oversupply. Yeah, it would be a concern if the population remained the same and then suddenly you're going to double all the properties that you've got. But that's not happening. You're still going to be short, I suspect, for quite a few years. The properties that are being sold today, say the off-plan properties, they're not for us. They're the people that haven't even got here yet.
True.
You know, that's the way I've sort of looked at this, is to say it's not, you know, it's not necessarily for people like me. It's, they haven't even, a lot of people are thinking about coming to Dubai. Some people have made their minds up. They're coming. Some people are like on the fence, but they will eventually come. And these properties, as and when they come up, I have no doubts whatsoever people will be here.
I mean, knowing what you bought, I don't know that any of that type of property or the houses and apartments that you bought to date, they are at risk of being oversupplied because they're quite unique quality properties in good locations and good areas. For my money, if you look at what's being launched by some of the large developers here, where they're building same low ticket items just to attract investors, and they've got thousands of the same units within exactly the same location. I think those are the ones where there's going to be a risk of oversupply. What does that mean? It means that obviously those places probably won't make a great deal of money for the investor, but also their rents are going to be very low, which is good for the population. That's good for people coming here, but it's not great for the investor. And that's where I see that sort of oversupply. I'm not going to mention which developers they are or which locations, but that's something that we need to take offline and have a conversation. You know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Do you agree with that? Do you think? Yeah.
You know, not every development is going to be a complete winner, but then it's down to, you know, who you're buying off, who's your agent. And I think that's where, if you found a good agent, you know, let them guide you, because they should know, you know, what's good and what isn't. And what I found is, you know, and I know it's off topic, but I find the ones that tell me not to buy are the ones that I actually end up buying from. Yeah. Not necessarily the projects that they've said not to buy in, but, you know, I sort of think, well, why did he tell me that? And, you know, what is it about that they don't like? And why would they would get commission if they sold it to me? But, and then I won't hear from them for months, but they'll pick me up and say, look, this is a place where you should. You know, the concept of oversupply, could it happen? Yeah, it's possible. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think you've got to look at what's happening in the West. Okay, when you look at the real facts of what's happening in the West, is they're running out of money. The economies are struggling. When the economies are struggling and you've got, you know, you've got presidents, prime ministers in charge of these Western countries, their job is to appease the masses. Okay, their job is not to make people like me happy, because I probably am in the top, you know, 1% or whatever in terms of earners in the UK, right? But that's not where all the votes are going to come from. There's no point making me happy. They'd rather keep everyone else happy so that they stay in power. And how do they do that? By taxing people like me, or business owners, or relatively high earners. So what's going to happen is, the more they're going broke, the more they're going to get targeted, you know, people that are doing well. So where are these people going to go? And there's a handful of destinations, and I'd say it's no surprise that UAE was, I think, the number one destination for millionaires.
From UK.
Yeah.
Last year, I believe so, and I think the same for this year. Apparently, even more this year. That's what
Mm.
I've read as well.
Yeah.
You're here. You've been You've been on a bit of a shopping spree.
Yep.
For quite a lot of properties. Are you going to carry on? Are you still going to invest in Dubai?
It's very hard for me to stop. I need to slow
Sorry,
down a little bit.
why is it so hard to stop?
Because I love the whole process of it. But a lot of these projects I find interesting, and I like getting involved.
Mm.
It's just my nature.
So it is still worth investing in Dubai.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. There's always been this question of oversupply since day one. In that, when anybody ever came to this country and saw the amount of cranes that are up in the air and the amount of construction that's going on, it's always been a question on everybody's lips. But if history proves that if you just hang on, you'll make money. You'll always make good rental yield, a much better rental yield than you would in most countries and most cities. But also, the value of the property will increase, and it has done. There's very few people that have lost money buying property in Dubai. The ones that lost are the ones that had to sell, and they didn't sell at the right time. Yeah?
Yeah.
So if you're looking in it in a short term, I think that would be short-sighted. I think if you're looking at medium to long term, you can't lose. As you say, the population is going to double. There's no developer, there's no government that can keep up with demand for housing. They're not gonna be able to keep up.
You can use all the stats that you like.
Yeah.
Do people like being here? That's the number one thing. Do people like coming here on holidays? Do people like living here? I mean, there's people that I speak to. I walk my dog. I live in that sort of leafy suburb called the Meadows, and I go to the dog park there, and I speak to people. I remember when I first got here, speaking to people then, and they're British expats. So, you've got an affinity with them. You talk to them. I was like, how long did you intend to stay here when you came? And almost all of them said maybe 1, maybe 2 years. And I said, how long has it been? Like 12 years, 15 years. And I was like flabbergasted, thinking, really? I'm like, yeah. I was like, yeah, we tried going back. In the beginning, we found it very difficult to live here because we were still so used to home. But then now this is our home. I take those bits in because you can, stats are there. You can skew stats here, there, and everywhere to suit your purpose. Let's talk to real people that live here, that have been here a while. And you say, are you happy? Would you live anywhere else? Most of them say no.
I mean, look, I'm a good example of that. I came here for maximum 2 years. That was my plan, 22 years.
Long time.
Yeah, I did pop back for a while. Lasted 9 months. Wanted to come back after 6. Took me about 2 months to send everything back.
Yeah. And so that, for me, is a fundamental. You say, well, would people want to live here? Yes, they would. And I'm getting, on average, at least 1 call a week from back home to say, hey, you've moved to Dubai. I'm thinking of doing the same. What are your thoughts? And so I'm getting this quite a lot. And it's interesting to see that I actually say to myself, if I could, I should have done it sooner. But with regards to property investment and investing in Dubai, I felt I missed the boat because I could have invested here many years ago and I didn't. But then when I look at everything else and I say, well, looking at the sentiment people have here, looking at the fact that I get at least 1 call a week for people saying I want to get out of here, I can't see, at least for the next 10, 15 years, there being an issue with property investment here. I can't see beyond that, but I'm a betting man, and I'd say at least for the next 10, 15 years, this place is very strong.
I would agree. And even if there is a small slowdown at some point, it'll speed up because we've seen that again and again here as well. The recovery rate for Dubai, for anything that goes on in the world that's bad and affects anybody's purse or money, it just recovers really fast.
Fundamental factor that I didn't point out before, but I think is so critical, which is the sentiment of leadership. And I can only use the UK as an example because that's where I'm from. The sentiment towards property, making money, or being a landlord is frowned upon. because they don't want you to be a landlord because they're saying, oh, people won't have houses and you shouldn't be a landlord. But now that all the landlords are getting out, tenants are having to pay excruciating rents. Okay, so the government's all there to say, how do we target landlords? How do we, stop people making as much money as possible? Whereas actually the opposite here. I find that the government here is very smart, very, very smart. They're saying we actually want people to make money. So we will control an element of the supply. If we see there's an imbalance, we will make sure we control it, because the golden goose is all about everybody making money. And I think that's what I love about this place is a government that and leadership that recognizes that. I think it may have gone off topic, but I think it's so
No, no,
critical. Yeah.
it's. I agree. I mean, I always say this is that Dubai and possibly even the entire UAE is run like a corporation.
Yeah.
And that's why, and they're quick to adjust any policy that they might have. If something's going wrong, they fix it, but they fix it in hours, not months and months, or we'll do it next year because we don't have the agenda now. They just get it done.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that's the big difference to probably anywhere else in the world. If you want to get something done here, it's done very fast. I mean, one of the things that you've touched on as far as this is a great place to live and everybody loves living here, but also there's business as well. People love doing business here. There's mega opportunities in both here in Dubai, in the UAE, and in the GCC, the region, and also probably even in Africa. There are people based here who are doing business all over, and this is an ideal place to run a business from. Just purely, if you just look at the time differences, you can talk to the Far East in the morning,
Yeah.
and you can talk to America in the afternoon.
I mean, I started the businesses that I own back in 2002. If I had to do it all over again, let's say I had to do another business now, I'd do it here. I wouldn't have done it back in the UK. Not now.
And what do you know about setting up a business here in Dubai?
I know because I've opened a company here, although I haven't done much with it as of yet. But I know that it's quite straightforward. To be honest, setting up a company even back home is quite straightforward. The issue is the game and the whole bureaucracy involved. That most of your time in the UK is not worrying about business; it's worrying about the taxes. So, what can I do to mitigate that tax in some capacity, or a new tax that they brought in, or VAT, or so on? And rather than saying, okay, how do I make my product better? So, you actually, you spend more of your time on the other stuff than on the stuff that you should be thinking about. And here, this is what I found when I speak to people, that they don't worry about taxes. They don't worry, although there is a corporation tax, but there's not all the other bits of legislation that make it near on impossible to run a business. They actually are pro-business here, because they realize if businesses thrive, it makes the economy thrive, and that makes property, that makes everything thrive. And with a lot of people coming here, entrepreneurs from the West, also from India, more and more, you've got a hub here of people that have a lot of connections, that have the right attitude. If you're going to set up a business here, you haven't got to look far to meet people that have already done it, and that you
Or want to
can
help
learn
you.
off, or want to help you.
Yeah.
I've not found that necessarily in the UK. But
I think that's again. I go back to my own stories that when you talk when you say in the UK, oh, I'm thinking about doing this business.
Yeah.
People around you they give you 20 reasons not to do it. Whereas here, there's 20 reasons how to do it, what to do, and yeah, we'll help you. And you need investment. It's. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody's going to experience that, but certainly that's my personal experience is how it's gone.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Agree.
And as again, even the company I work for now, if they want to make a change of policy, it's like instant.
Yeah.
They don't have to go to a board. They don't have to do anything. It's just, well, the owners, they'll just sit round on a table the same day and make a decision.
Yeah.
And Tomorrow, it's the new policy. It's brilliant.
I think it works.
And no one's going to turn around and say, well, you're not allowed to do that.
Yeah.
To go back to something you said about taxes, etc., in the UK and landlords, etc. Where, I mean, although you haven't got any properties that are completed yet, what's your sense of rental yields? What do you think if you do keep any of these properties and you decide you're going to rent out? What's your expectation in terms of getting a net rental yield?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, but again, I've not rented any out yet. But from what everything that I read up, I talk to you and listen to a few of the others. Generally, it's about 5% net rental yield. I don't know. Maybe you can tell me.
I think that's in some of the higher value properties,
Right.
like sort of some of the low price properties that you bought in places like JVC and JVT. I think you probably expect to get 8% plus, and maybe on a short term basis you might get even more. And how does that compare to the UK? Obviously, you've kept property. If I was to buy any of your properties today at a market rate and rent them out, what would you expect me to be getting then?
Well, mine are in London.
Right.
Suburbs of London, particularly South London. I think you'd be lucky if you made 3% at best, and that's before taxes.
That's before. And how much would the tax man take out of that?
Just call it half.
Right.
So
So
what
you end
you're
up
left,
with 1.5%,
yeah,
and then it's capital growth. And obviously, if you've got a mortgage, then
yeah.
you're finished.
So
Yeah.
simply, when I really think about that question, when people are asking me, "Oh, do you think it's worth investing in Dubai rather than the UK?" and my answer is, "What's your alternative?" Very simple. What was you going to do? Was you going to invest in the UK still at that sort of rate? It's a no-brainer.
Are you speaking to people who
Yeah.
are investing in the UK?
Yeah.
And are now changing their.
I've got a cousin. He told me he's going to buy a rental property in the UK. And now knowing what I know and everything, and he's never done it before, I wish I'd stopped him, in all honesty. But people will continue to do it there because the UK still has a great brand name. And the hope is that things will change. It's going to take a good 10, 15 years before you see governments over there realizing to say, hold on, we shouldn't have done this, and reverse some of these things that they're doing that are anti-landlord or anti-investor or anti-people making money. So in the meantime, you can start a portfolio here that at least, if nothing else, and when I say 5% as rental yields, and you've said, okay, they might be higher in certain areas, I'm saying, okay, I'd be happy with 5 because it's still a lot better than back home. Now knowing what I know, this is very important. Is I would advise do buy in Dubai, buy something in Dubai, even if you're not sure about moving here, but you think that it may well happen in a few years. I would suggest for them to invest now. Let's say in an off plan, and let's say it typically takes what 3-4 years for a
2 to
build.
4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
In that time, it's possible that you may have moved here. Once you've moved here, and as far as the tax year is concerned, you're no longer a resident of the UK. You can come here and sell that for a profit and not pay any tax on it back to the UK. Whereas if you, let's say, for example, you did that with a UK property, if I go and buy one today in the UK, and wait 3-4 years and then decide to move to Dubai, I'd still have to pay tax on it, albeit that, I might be able to take advantage of this, 2015 date, etc. But you're still having to pay on it. Same applies for rent. My rental properties in the UK, I'm still paying tax on, even though I'm here. Whereas if I had bought here before I moved, I would have been quids in. And then the other factor, I'm sorry if I sort of ramble on a bit, but it's now knowing what I know, the inheritance side of things is critical because, last year in the budget, it was, there was that whole hoo-ha about new non-doms and how they're going to be taxed on their worldwide income if they live in the UK. Well, as part of that thing, the question of domicility, which has always been a bit of a grey area because you could have left the UK and still, upon your death, your estate will be levied a 40% tax, okay, inheritance tax. But they've changed it now, so it's residency based. Provided that you've been out of the UK for a period of 10 years, 10 tax years, then there's no more inheritance tax, except if you own UK assets. So on those UK assets, you would still be charged at 40%. So why would you bother? You know, if you're ultimately going to leave the UK and you're thinking about it, the very first thing I would suggest, if I knew all of this a few years ago and had done more homework, I would have bought here. I'd have had an off-plan property. Maybe by now it would have been ready or whatever, and I would have moved in. I could have cashed in, sold it, or rent it because I'm not going to get taxed on it. But above that, the inheritance aspect of that property not falling under my net, provided I stick it outside of the UK for 10 years. That's a godsend. So why would I continue in the UK under those circumstances? I'm not quite sure.
I would say is Dubai is not for everyone. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I think in the old days, if you had, say, I don't know, European passport or British passport, and you rocked up in Dubai, it used to be the case that you get double the money over here, and they welcome you with open arms into a job. I think it's become a lot more competitive now, so I wouldn't necessarily come here and then hope for the best. So it's not for everyone, and it's not cheap to live here. I think that's very important. I mean, you could live cheaply. I'm not saying you can't, but you can't come here with nothing and then hope to get a job and then, wing it. It's
No,
quite
there's no
difficult.
social security. There's no unemployment benefit. That's for sure. I mean, that's probably one of the big driving forces for a lot of people is that when you come here, you've got nothing to rely on. If you don't, I mean, it used to be, and we talked about this. I've talked about this recently with one of my colleagues. Is when you came here, maybe 10, 15, well, maybe 15, 20 years ago, and you lost your job, you had to leave. But now, if you lose your job, you get another job. There's a lot of opportunities here.
I think jobs, I'm not saying they're harder to find here, but I think that jobs will increase here. Why? Because business people are coming here.
Sure.
They'll want people, right? But give you two examples. A good friend of mine back home, his name's Bill. He was a police officer, then became a fire officer, and now he's responsible for checking these high rises, for fire safety, and it's quite a niche job, that came after sort of the Grenfell incident. So he asked me, "Oh, well, I'm ready to move to Dubai," and I said, "Not so fast, Bill." I said, "Get your exams done, get all the qualifications because it counts here. That sort of thing will ultimately. There's no point you coming over here as a firefighter because they've got them, and why would they have you for your knowledge and skills and experience in doing what you're doing? Get the qualifications, and you will get a job here. I'm very confident, and I'd say that's right for him." There's another chap that I spoke to only a couple of weeks ago. He's got a family, earning a good wage in the UK. And I asked his circumstances, looking at 3 kids and their ages, etc. And I said, well, back home, you're indirectly, I mean, you're not paying for the kids' school. They go to normal schools. You're paying it in taxes, but you would need to earn a lot more income here because your kids were going to go to private school. It's 3 kids. That's what about, call it 25 grand each in school fees. Is already 75 grand out the door just in kids' fees. So for him, he needs to earn a lot more before he would come here and
Not all schools are 25,000.
I don't know. I
Just
mean,
so you know, no, they're
right.
not. You can get much cheaper than that,
Okay.
half that. But some of the top schools here are costing that, but it's just the same as the UK.
Yeah.
Although there's no 20% VAT on
Yeah.
private schooling.
Yeah. True.
It's actually probably slightly cheaper to go to school, so to a really good school here.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I wouldn't disagree with anything you've said. Anybody that's got money to invest and is thinking about coming to the UAE to invest, and they called you, Minesh, I've got this money, and it doesn't matter how much. But what are you telling them? What do you say?
Now knowing what I know, I think there's a lot of developers here. I think there's a lot of areas here with sort of, there's little. It's almost as if Dubai is split into different areas with its own pricing, and also depend on views and your, uh, what's nearby, infrastructure, and so on and so forth. I'd say get yourself a good, reputable agent, to ask them to sort of lead the way for you. Don't be necessarily attracted to just the best payment plans, or um, you know who is giving you a brand new car when you buy one of their properties. I'd say stick to fundamentals. And I think that when you've not been here, or you've not lived here, or you don't have experience, it's critical. Just get yourself a good agent.
Have you seen what sort of mistakes have you seen other investors make that you've heard of?
When I speak to a lot of people that I've spoken to, they've said, we've invested in something already. Oh, it's a great payment plan. Okay, but what about the rest?
What's a great payment plan?
Where they're saying like
1% a month.
1% a month, and so I think there were some giveaways with some of them. But I always look at it and I say, would you see someone living there? What's around there? I'm not saying that the development is necessarily bad, but you could have done a lot better. That money could have been better spent elsewhere. This is why it's very important that you you, you get yourself up to speed by dealing with agents who've got some experience and some knowledge, and those that are prepared to say no to you.
True that. So right now, over the next couple of months, which areas of Dubai are you sort of most excited about?
What, in areas where I'm looking to invest further?
If you'd like to
Or-
tell me that, yeah. Where,
okay.
where you think you're
Well,
investing next?
around DIFC, I think is a good
Okay.
spot. Looking at something there.
DIFC, the Dubai International Financial Center.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think that will, that's still got such a buzz around it. Business, commerce, everything. A lot happens down there.
I've heard they're going to quadruple the size of it over
Yeah.
the next 10 or 15
Yeah,
years.
so that's an interesting area. There's some new developments coming in around there. I still think the Dubai South, for those that are looking at, 5 years, a 10-year plan of investment, I still think, because that's where the government is investing a lot. And I think that's a very important factor. Look at where the government's investing a lot of money, because generally you'll find you won't go too far wrong there.
Fair enough. We've been working now together for a year. It's probably
Yeah.
just over a year now.
That's right.
What's your advice to telling UK investors in terms of trying to find a good agent? I mean, obviously you trust me. I hope
Yeah.
you trust me.
Yeah.
And
Well,
we've had a good relationship so
yeah,
far.
I think it's
Yeah.
you- you're not going to be for everyone, as other agents are not going to be for everyone. And it's people. It's what sort of people do you relate to, or feel that they understand you and you understand them. I get phone calls from agents all the time, because as soon as I got here and showed some interest, obviously you get a lot of phone calls. But it's those that take the time to understand your circumstances, to know what makes a good fit for what your objectives are. And I think that you're only going to get that by talking to people, talking to agents, getting to know them. What are they saying to you? Cross-verify, if you don't mind me saying. I cross-verified things that you were saying with other people. Just say, is it what he's telling me? Should I believe it or not? And when it starts matching up, then you know what you've got there is someone with some integrity. And people buy people.
Talking of which, I know that you don't like to talk about the future so much because you're not quite sure what the future's looking like. But do you have any specific goals in terms of your property portfolio?
No,
No.
I don't. I wish I did. I actually
Yeah.
wish I did, but
It's a constant question I'm going to ask you so many times. And
I don't know.
every time we ever go to a developer and meet,
Yeah.
they ask you, what is your strategy? And you,
Don't have
no,
one. I
no.
really don't have one. I want to try and find good projects where I believe in it. And is the developer sound? What have they done before? The stuff like what you've showed me, where you've took me around, and showed me the sorts of things that developers done in the past. And then looking at things like the payment plan, then looking at, how many units are there in that offering? What's the amenities like? What's the roads nearby, what's possible to happen around there. And I think there's so many things like that. But if coming here, or now I know a lot more. What's my strategy going forward is just build on the knowledge and still deal with people like yourself uh, to bounce ideas off. Many a time I've asked you, what do you think of this one? And you'll tell me it's okay, or that one's better, or, oh, there's this bit of news that perhaps I didn't know. Uh, just, it's all about information, knowledge. And why would I claim to be a great property investor with bags of skills at my disposal when there's someone sitting opposite me like yourself with over 20 years experience here? So why not tap into it?
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Minesh. I really appreciate your time,
Welcome.
and great to talk again. And we'll see. I'm sure we will meet very soon.
Look forward to it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
All the very best. Massive thanks to Minesh for joining me and being so open about his journey. If you're in the UK and have been curious about investing in Dubai, I hope this gave you a clearer picture. If you want to speak to me directly, feel free to reach out to me on www.stephenleckie.com. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.